This podcast is a collaboration between Costard and Touchstone Productions and the Dads from the Crypt podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the How Not to Make a Movie podcast. My name is Alan Katz.
And my name is Gil Adler.
This one is, we're calling it Post-Mortem. 2 days ago, we held our live Dead Easy table read for the benefit of the Motion Picture Home, the MPTF, and oh gosh, it went swimmingly after a rough beginning. It was really an enjoyable experience being part of it. I don't know what it was like to listen to it, but doing it with we had a great cast, and we'll talk about them shortly, but. Wow, it was such fun, and everyone brought their A games. I enjoyed doing it. What was it like to listen to?
Well, maybe we can get answers from some people, because I would love to know the answer to the question: should we have made Bordello of Blood, or should we have made Dead Easy?
That's a good question. Yeah. If suddenly if there was a choice, which one would have been the better option? That's something that we will ask. Chelsea, and we will ask Jason as they come up. What was your feeling about Dead Easy yourself? Did you reading the script again after 25 years? What did you think?
It was really interesting because it reminded me of certain shots and certain scenes that I had really worked out well in my head and how to shoot them. Like the first time the Harlequin appears and he sort of the protoplasm comes off the wall. I remember that line. And I had such delicious stuff. And I thought, right. I was so looking forward to shooting that. And then that didn't happen. And then the relationship with he and his father. And I thought, that gives us some heart and brings some, jeopardy to the kid, jeopardy to the father. And yet there was something to root for. And so I kind of missed that, because that's what we didn't have in Bordello. So reading it through was, I don't know, on some level, very rewarding, because it brought me back to something that we had planned on doing and doing it because we loved it. On the other hand, it sort of felt a little bit dated now.
Yeah. Oh, it was definitely, you could feel 25 years of age. And I mean, one could update. Yeah, it definitely, it's a story that could be updated. I found myself, we adapted it from a screenplay into a sort of kind of radio drama version of itself, with narration describing a lot of the action sequences. I found myself cringing at a couple of places. I tried, as I was adapting it, I tried not to change too much of it. And if the dialogue wasn't to my liking, I resisted the urge as I was moving it across, of changing it. I really resisted. I think I added one new line as I was tweaking this thing. I couldn't help it, and I think I couldn't help it.
Well, to tell you the truth, the 25 years I felt affected the script more than it's affected me. I felt much more youthful than the script was.
Yeah. I of course, the whole thing was shut down 3 weeks before we started principal photography. That was 3 weeks of drafts that script would have gone through. It would have gone through countless revisions, and then once we got cast, that would have changed it too, because we would have rethought certain things based on who was going to be doing the dialogue, and that would have added or subtracted certain things, which we would have accommodated, of course.
Right.
So it's strange to revisit a script that we never got a chance to finish.
Yeah, totally. But I think we should bring in our guests now, and because I think
that dribble out of us. We're going to bring in first. We'll bring in Chelsea, Rebecca, who an awful lot of you will know who she is, and here comes Chelsea. And hello, Chelsea.
Hi.
First of all, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for joining us on Saturday for the live Dead Easy table read. You were fantastic, by the way.
Thank you so much. That was so cool. I had no idea what I was getting myself into when I initially said yes. I was like, okay, this is a neat thing for charity. Yeah, totally. And then I started learning like who was all going to be involved. And it just was like, what did I stumble into?
What did I get myself into? Right. I must tell you, the thing that I love the most about the entire read were your different voices. I said this to Alan afterwards. I said, wow, that was great. She really brought it alive.
You have a fan. You have a fan, Chelsea.
Oh, thank you so much. Dead easy. I think it'll sell. I wish I could help you, Mr. Daru, but I'm afraid we don't have any record of a Michael Daru being here at the time you're asking about.
Hey, Dad. I did?
I'm not supposed to talk to you about him.
We'll do a deeper dive into you after we bring Jason. I don't want to leave him in the waiting room.
Sure.
And then we'll get your reactions to it. But we just wanted to tell you while we had you that we both thoroughly enjoyed what you did. And
oh, thank you so much. I was so like, I definitely practiced. I was like, I want them all to sound. It's hard because it's not animated, right? It's like this is a table read of something that it would be live action, but it was like, all right, I still want to do voices. It was an interesting exercise, honestly.
I'll be honest. As with so many things that have happened in calendar year 2022, to me, this thing got bigger than I expected it to. When I started doing this podcast in March, hey, if you had told me on January 1st of this year of 2022 that was it December 19th, I would be talking the postmortem of a reading of Dead Easy I'd done with Gil Adler.
Yeah.
Because I'm doing a podcast with Gil Adler while I'm in the middle of doing a couple of other projects with Gil Adler. I would have asked you, what are you smoking? Please give it to me. It's 1,000 times stronger than anything I can get my hands on.
I know. I mean, honestly,
madness.
When I even realized, like, wait, Gil Adler, like one of the kings of the Dark Castle. Are you kidding me? It's like, James, you won't believe it.
Well, let's not leave James out of this because he actually saved the day.
Oh gosh!
How to get the podcast going all together. So I don't want to leave James out of this. James is very integral to the success of what we did Saturday.
Yes,
he is our hero.
Yes. It's very convenient having like such a wonderful husband also be tech support.
Gosh, yes. Well, when we started to do this reading, I didn't imagine that we were going to nail down the cast that we got. That was absolutely not, and it was when we asked Victoria Burrows as kind of just a friend of the court, hey, can you help us get a couple of actors? And we knew we had you because Jason had said, I got this person who could do the little boy's voice, and she also does, she's a voiceover artist. Which is great, and we trusted Jason on because he said, yeah, she's going to be great, and we went, great, perfect. And then we said to Victoria, hey, can you help us just get a few more actors? Wow. Tia Carrera, Jake Busey, Sean Astin,
oh my gosh,
Leslie Zemeckis, and of course John Kassir, but John was a friend of the court, so
sure.
That was not anything that I expected walking in this door.
When I was told who the casting director was, I looked her up and I was like, wait, she did all the Lord of the Rings movies. And like, I'm the age where like Lord of the Rings is one of the reasons I started to love film, and like I went to film schools where I met my husband, and like Lord of the Rings was just like we're going to
talk about that. We're going to talk. I'm going to ask you about your time at the University of Michigan. I'm rather I'm curious about that. So
yeah.
All right. Well, tell you what. Let's get.
Do we bring Jason in?
We'll get the whole conversation
let's get Jason.
Going. Let's get Jason in, and Jason, come on in. And here comes Jason. Hello, Jason. To Jason, for those uninitiated in our audience, I mean, you should know who Dads from the Crypt are. They are the co-producers of this podcast. Jason is one of the Dads from the Crypt. The Dads from the Crypt, their franchise is they review all the episodes of Tales from the Crypt and other shows, but they also give parenting advice. And that's what got me.
And both Alan and I know we both need parenting advice.
Oh my God! Well,
no, we never disclaimer. We never said we give sound parenting advice.
I kind of like John's take that we always thought of Tales from the Crypt as parenting advice.
Exactly.
Anyway, so we've had the chance to just touch base with Chelsea. We'll do a deeper dive into where the hell she came from shortly. But let's get to the post-mortem, the autopsy part of the program. Gil and I have discussed what we felt about Dead Easy. Hey, you guys, have at it. What did you think about? All right. What did you think about that script?
I wasn't expecting there to be a computer game involved, and I wanted to know so much more about that. Honestly, I was like really intrigued by that aspect of it, especially. So when was the script written? This would have been like late 90s, like mid-late 90s.
Yes.
Yeah.
1994.
Right.
Yeah. So even just the type of game that would have been in the script is, I mean, it's so different than now. I mean, I'm imagining like James and I are huge fans of like Myst. I don't know if that's a good reference point.
It's fine. I'd forgotten that there was a computer game, and when we reread the script for the first time a couple of weeks ago, that was a complete surprise to me. I'd totally forgotten that was ever in there.
I think. Do you remember, Alan? Do you remember how that came about?
The computer game?
Yeah.
Is there a story? Why do you remember? Is there a story?
I think I remember a little bit. Do you remember we were doing Tales from the Crypt, and we got a call one day, and they said they wanted to do a pinball machine.
Well, yeah. We
they wanted us to write all the stuff on the pinball machine, but there was no money. And we said, well, we're Writers Guild, and they said, well, the best we could do is, would you each accept the pinball machine? And the two of us, our eyes lit up like, what?
As I recall, there was money. There was. We had a choice. We had $3,500 or a pinball machine.
Oh, I don't remember the 35.
Yeah. There was. We had a choice. We could take money, $3,500 for writing the copy, or the pinball machine.
My gosh, it's like The Price is Right. It's do you want to take home the washing machine or the money?
But it wasn't.
And we jumped at the chance to get the pinball machine.
Of course,
you jumped the pinball machine. We were.
And I think that's what gave us. I think that's what gave us the idea.
Yeah, you're right. That was somewhere in there. That was the impetus for the idea of the game. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm wearing a Mario 64 Mario Kart 64 T-shirt. So the idea of '90s gaming, is a big part of my my growing up, and a big part of Tales from the Crypt. So of that time era where video games were becoming really popular and the console wars were happening. So I think for like what I like to call the second generation fans, that were like the kids that were too young to really be watching the show, but were watching anyways.
Right.
Yeah, sure.
We were all really into video games as well at the same time. So I think that definitely like hit a part in our brain.
Isn't that funny? God, wow.
I feel like video games too, it makes so much sense to kind of like the association with video games and something like Tales from the Crypt, because Tales from the Crypt comes from like, it's the comics, it's like EC Comics, and those were such a moral panic in like the 50s. Parents were like, this is ripping apart the fabric of the nation, is these horror comics. And we see the same thing with video games too. They're a nice little fit together.
That's actually a really good point, because they had Senate hearings about video games in the 90s. So that would have been a great parallel.
I know that you said on one of your podcasts, Chelsea, you said we need people to be offended by horror movies. Part of the fun of horror is that people get concerned that it's destroying the moral fabric of the nation.
Oh, I'm curious what episode that was from.
First of all, I love that.
Yeah.
I love how you think. All right. So my question is, all right, what's the ultimate horror movie that steps, that rubs it in people's noses?
Oh,
I think like every generation has one, like The Exorcist in the 70s, maybe like Frankenstein in the 30s or 40s, and then like but Rosemary's Baby in the 60s.
But those didn't. I mean, Universal Pictures never offended anyone's sensibilities, there was a Hays Code that made sure no such thing was going to happen.
I think some of those were pre-code. I know at least I'm trying to think if it was Frankenstein or there was something about the depiction of like the dead in those movies where that was the first time. It's weird to think about, but some people had never seen, you know, something so like just
what year did Todd Browning make Freaks? Is anybody
was that in the 40s? I thought that was earlier.
It was early. It's early, I think.
But that's a good example of like a movie that really, even the studio was like, we can't have these actors eating with our other actors because it offends them. You know,
that was 1932.
Yeah.
And when was the code? Officially,
we keep Googling.
I'm going to ask you guys.
I know. I'm like, I should know that. That was like the late 40s, maybe.
It's a Hays Code started in 34.
Okay, it's earlier than that.
That's when Will Hays came to.
But or Psycho is a good one that really offended a lot of people.
Oh, sure. Well, yeah. Well, yeah.
Well, think about this for a second. Just think about this for a second. Bill Gaines and his dad were brought down to Washington D.C. to testify in front of the Un-American Committee because of their comic books.
Yeah.
And their comic books, when you look at their comic books as comic books, they were little moral tales. And if you read the first panel, you knew the entire story. The whole thing was laid out to you. And yet they were brought out on the carpet and pulled down to testify in front of the Un-American Committee. And that was in the 50s. That's really how far we've come, if we've come at all. From that kind of an attitude and that kind of an approach. I mean, today parents, encourage kids to watch horror movies and enjoy them themselves. I'm amazed sometimes when we sometimes meet people and we're talking about horror and they bring their kids in to have a conversation with it because the kids are much more aware of what's horror today and what they like and what they don't like.
I mean, you are both horror aficionados. Let's put the offensive scrim on. Has a horror movie ever offended either of you?
I guess what I mean by like a horror movie that's offensive is it's not necessarily a horror movie that is like cruel or intentionally mean. There's something like a where it stops being fun. I don't think that that's what I love or what I think horror movies should strive to be, because I don't feel like that's what horror is. Horror is such a nice home for like misfits.
Yeah. No argument. But let's go at that. But there are movies that
push
go
it
past
a little.
the line.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean the go-to, and like I am all for extreme gore, extreme things. Like there's a movie called Martyrs, which is extremely beautiful but extremely disturbing, extremely boundary pushing. But I like that's I call it the best movie I never want to see again. But I appreciate it. But then there's a movie called a Serbian film, which is kind of like sexually horrific. And it's just, I don't see any real redeeming. I mean, I don't see for me. I don't see redeeming.
And it's interesting because that movie, and I have never seen that movie because I'm aware of like just what happens in it, and I'm like that. I don't need to see it ever. I'm fine. But I am pretty sure that movie was made as a response to the very strict, like artistic censorship codes of Serbia, like where he's from. So it's like in that respect, I think there's some value to it. Like something like, I can't believe I'm going to mention this movie. James is going to hear me and be like, honey, what are you doing? But like Salo is this disgusting movie, but it was, I see James looking at me now, but it was made that is a movie that is a reaction against Italian fascism.
That's a Pasolini's film.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that, if you're looking at it at face value, it offends all good taste. It's like, it's disgusting. It's like, when you look at it without knowing the context within which it's made, you would maybe think it has no redeemable value whatsoever. But you look at the context and why it was made, and it's an important movie.
I wouldn't say a movie. These movies don't have any redeeming value, but I think they have a cultural reference that doesn't translate to outside of, if you don't know or don't understand what they're referencing, what they're rebelling against. And it just seems like they're doing it to be edgy and doing it to push boundaries, and that's fine. But when it comes to certain subject matters, child violence, etc., some people don't want to go there. That's fine.
How do you feel about things like I Spit on Your Grave?
Those are ones where I think of that, like Last House on the Left, where I'm like, I appreciate them as films, especially Last House. I think Last House is like, Wes Craven was like one of the all-time greats, and he was a very intelligent man too. And I think that's what makes that movie good. I've seen it once, and I don't know if I ever need to see it again because I was so disturbed by it. But I don't know. I guess it's a lot of it is intent, honestly, and it's also, even if it is total, schlock or trash, there is something. I don't know. I feel like all movies kind of have something to tell us about like the person who made it, or like the time it was made in. And in retrospect, often those movies where at the time it's like, there's no point to this existing. You look back years later and think like, this actually is really informative. I don't know.
And also, I find it's easier for me to watch older movies. There's like a disassociation I can find with watching I Spit on Your Grave, Last House on Your Left, where I'm like, okay, that's the film grade is different. Like, it just doesn't seem real to me.
Sure.
Where if it's something more modern, it hits me much more visceral. Especially when you become a parent, I find my tastes have changed and what I'm willing to put myself through.
Yeah, I think that's very true. Becoming a parent definitely has an impact. It had an impact on my taste.
I've heard that. We just were at a horror convention recently. We were talking to like a family that came to see us, and the parents were saying, yeah, when we had kids, it was incredible how my tolerance for certain things within horror totally changed.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. It's like when I was a kid and the original It came on TV, scared the crap out of me, but I was scared for myself. When I watched the new It, I was scared like for the kids as if they were my kids.
Yeah.
It was a totally different type of fear.
Let's jump back to Dead Easy for a moment. Aside from the video game element, was there anything else that surprised you or?
I think it's so interesting thinking about where, like when it was written and like where it kind of would fit in culturally among where horror was in like the mid to late 90s. Because when I think of like the mid 90s, I think of Scream, and we start to get into like those teen horror movies where they're grounded and they're like real, they're set in like high school, or they're not, we're moving past like the kind of like Candyman, Nightmare on Elm Street kind of, so that's what's interesting to me too, is it was almost like this, it reminded me of like such a specific type of 90s horror.
The ambition that was in our heads, and it was in my head, was Nick Rogue's Don't Look Now. Really, which is intensely atmospheric. I mean, it's Venice and water, and the color red is just, that's so much.
That's Donald Sutherland, right?
Yeah, he plays the male lead, and Julie Christie.
Okay.
It's what an amazing ending. Just shocking. It's just shocking. Oh my God. It's but that's what we were, it was less horror and more psychological thriller, but clearly you had a villain who was, I think would have been a terrific horror villain, that Harlequin character.
And the texture of New Orleans and just the whole environment just felt like it was so ripe for a horror movie.
Hearing John do the Harlequin character, I thought John was wonderful.
Oh my gosh, that was so cool.
But were we surprised? No, we weren't.
No, that was a shoo-in.
John had asked me a couple of days before if the character was Cajun. I said, "Yeah, you got a Cajun on you," and he said, "Yeah, I can try one." I said,
"Not exactly Club Med now, is it? The weather sucks, the plumbing leaks, and wait till you see what's making that smell."
I think that would have been, the Harlequin would have been just a terrific villain.
Yeah,
right up there alongside Billy Zane's villain in Demon Knight.
Yeah, and that's a tragedy of a script read. You don't get to see the physicality of how that would be played.
Sure,
and like the image of it like morphing and the bells turning into snakes. That would have been so cool to see.
I think the Harlequin would have been 1,000 times scarier than Lilith. The villain of Bordello.
Although Alan, I have to disagree with you. Lilith was very frightening to me.
You still have nightmares about her.
I still have nightmares. I'd go to the set in the morning and I'd panic.
Are you? Yeah.
It wasn't. It was interesting for me because I don't think I've ever read a full script, much less a script that never existed. I've read like pieces of scripts of movies that I've seen before. I've never read like something completely new. So it took me like 3 days. Obviously, the version you gave me was 120 pages. So
yeah,
it took. I'm not used to reading scripts. So I had to like keep reading through to kind of visualize in my head what was happening.
And,
so
and
it was
that was not a finished. It was not a finished script. It was still had ways to go to.
But I've never sat down and read a full script like that before from start to beginning. So it took me like 2 or 3 days just
to
boring,
make aren't they? They're really boring.
I was gonna say reading a script is interesting because it's dry unless you if you're used to reading them, you kind of like the format is more intuitive, but it's
I'm going to bitch and moan about screenwriting for a second here. The format is really it's something that the DGA loves because it's easy to board. Because it's all about from scene to scene to scene. What are the elements in the scene? Is it interior, exterior, day, night, and which actors are in it? It's designed so that these days it can be boarded. But the screenplay format, in my opinion, no longer reflects what the finished product is going to look like. We don't go from cut to interior this, exterior that, like it's proscenium march. That's not how it flows so much more fluidly than the screenplay shows. And it's one of the things that we wanted to avoid in the reading was it sounding like a screenplay, because God, that would have put everyone to sleep. So,
sure.
So part of the I think it was necessity was to take the drama and kind of leave the screenplay behind and just try to get the flow of the action and the characters and to let it all flow for you all.
Yeah, the sound effects are a good choice. When I realized there were going to be sound effects, I knew like, oh, someone made a choice who has sat through a bunch of table reads and knows you got to spice it up a little bit.
And we got really lucky on that because sometimes they just seem to end it right at the right time every time. It was, and I think I hit one wrong, and towards the end, the last sound, something blew up that wasn't supposed to blow up.
Oh yeah, I think it was like Danny. I think it was like Danny's head is now the Harlequin.
Yeah.
But it was an explode. Yeah, Danny's head just explodes.
Shit.
It was either describe it that way, or else Alan and I were thinking about going down a proverbial aisle selling or giving out popcorn, and we couldn't have access to thinking about popcorn, so we just said, okay, let's make it this.
There you go. He's back. You froze for a moment there, Gil.
Of course, I always do that. And I'm up in Canada, so the internet is a different world up here.
The Vancouver internet.
Yeah,
Vancouver.
No, I was saying we chose that because the alternative was you and I were going to run up and down the virtual aisles offering popcorn.
Yes, we were. Gil had a great question. What if we had a choice today to make one of those two movies? And this is Gil's question. You should be asking it.
Go ahead. You're doing it.
No, you finish the question. So
no, I would love to know from the audience that saw the read-through and have seen Bordello, in their opinion, which would they have chosen for us to make? Bordello, or would they have rather seen what we would do with Dead Easy?
I mean, personally, I think this is a much better. I mean, it's still, I think, a couple of drafts away.
No.
But I think the finished product would have been much better, and I've seen that sentiment in a couple of tweets of people that did see it. And
you see, Universal fucked us up, man. Completely fucked us up.
Calm down, Alan. Calm down. They're not there anymore. Those guys are all gone.
I'm hunting them down.
I'm actually curious, realizing that this script, I'm assuming is kind of, I'm not sure like what draft it would have been, but I'm assuming it hadn't been touched yet by like the studio or hadn't gotten like studio notes yet or anything, right?
Oh, no, we'd gone through lots and lots.
You've gone through, okay.
Yeah, no, it had evolved quite a lot. It started out as a thing called Fat Tuesday, written by a guy named J.P. Kelly, and then we began to adapt it into Dead Easy.
I see. Okay. Because I was curious if during the reading or even just revisiting it, if you're like, if anything stands out as something that you're like, oh, there's no way this would actually be the way it ends up being on screen. Like this would get changed, you know, just whether for money, like you instantly read something like, oh, that's going to be so expensive. There's no way that would, we're leaving it in the script, but we're going to have issues with it.
I don't think so. I think, the one thing that Alan and I really like doing, and I think together we do real well, is that, and we did this with Tales from the Crypt all the time, if there was a problem, whether it be money or time or energy or whatever, or the director was not interested in doing it, or an actor wasn't interested in doing something, we would be able to go upstairs and rewrite something relatively quickly and address that problem, whether it be money or time or someone's concern for emotionally what was going on in the scene. So I think those things never frightened us. I shouldn't say they frightened the hell out of us, but we were able to fix it. We would go upstairs and we would look at each other and, like we're frightened to death. And then, within a half hour, come down with something that might work, might not work, but then we would go back up and do it again. So I don't think anything in the script really frightened us. In fact, a lot of the things I looked forward to doing, I looked forward to revealing the Harlequin. I looked forward to having that pyroplasm come off the ceiling. I thought that we could do something there that would be never done before and very interesting the way we would do it. I love the relationship between, the kid and his father. And I thought that's something that, you don't usually get in a horror movie. You don't get relationship, you don't get emotion. And so I thought one of the things that we would have enhanced probably would have been that relationship, to make it cleaner and make it clearer and to make it even more emotional. And also there
was an echo with the Armand Deroux character. So, there was a way to have, that echo across generations we would have played with much more.
Yeah.
Here's a question, and this might have been more like a production sight gag kind of thing, but I kind of feel like Tales from the Crypt is kind of known for a little bit more tongue-in-cheek, maybe having some Easter eggs, some references like the Gaines orphanage, that kind of thing. As I was reading through the script, that's one thing I was kind of looking for. I didn't really find much of that, but you could have easily changed the name of the orphanage to the Gaines orphanage, or you could have put a vision of the key from Demon Knight in the video game or something. Was that something you might have considered?
Oh, surely.
Probably, although we did think of this as a thriller, and we really thought, whereas Demon Knight was much more horror, we thought this could be more of a thriller and sort of bridge horror and thriller together. And so, we wanted to do something. We probably would have put stuff in that was Spain's estate, but I don't know if we would put in a lot.
No, but there's a little something.
Yeah.
Alas, it did not go that way.
Right. Well, it's interesting again because the first movie, Demon Knight, had huge stakes. The stakes were the fate of the universe in such a big concept, and this one is a family, which is interesting change in scale.
Right.
That's my preferred kind of horror story. I think smaller stakes often tend to be scarier because they just feel more real. Like that could happen to you. I mean, everything in this is extremely supernatural, but it just feels a bit more relatable than the fate of the world.
Right. They become more intimate as well.
So, Chelsea.
Yes.
Has it always been horror for you?
Not always. I was extremely as a kid, I was a huge scaredy cat. I was not the kind of kid who was sneakily watching horror movies when my parents were I was terrified of horror.
Let's start with where'd you grow up?
Detroit, Michigan.
Okay, Detroit. And then you went to University of Michigan. Yes,
and I guess getting into my teenage years, I would watch horror movies at sleepovers with my girlfriends, and then went to University of Michigan and took a class that honestly changed my life. It was a horror film theory and history class taught by Mark Kligerman, and it just, I don't know, it was like a switch flipped, and I just fell in love.
Prior to taking that class, what's the first horror movie that sticks in your head?
I remember as a kid catching on TV the original Blob, like the black and white, The Blob,
Oh, wow.
scared
Oh my
the
God.
shit out of me. I like that, just that black and white movie. I have like vivid memories of just seeing bits of it.
Was there something in particular that you saw that scared you? Was there an image from the movie that sticks in your head that you saw?
Oh God, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I think I just have a very vivid image of like, because in that original movie, it's very like tar looking. It's like this really deep, like black kind of viscous, and it's going underneath a door. And I just remember a woman screaming. I haven't seen the original in a very long time, but just, yeah, that like, I don't know, just as a kid, there's something so like I hadn't seen anything like that. And maybe it being black and white also wigged me out too, because it just was so different than anything I'd ever seen.
Okay, so it gets underneath
when you first went to Michigan, what were you planning on studying?
I jumped all over the place. For a while, I was going to study business. I almost went to their business school. I'm so glad I didn't. I would have been miserable. Even before Michigan, I was considering art school, though. I was an art student in high school. Like I still draw constantly. I draw and paint.
Who were you in high school? Which?
An art kid. I was always.
An art kid in high school?
Oh
okay.
yeah, like after school, I would be in the art classroom. Like yeah.
Okay, so the art kid who horror movie gets under her skin, but not an aficionado, and then you go and you take this class at Michigan, and what is the thing that parts the clouds and suddenly?
It was, I guess the way that class contextualized horror, because it was specifically horror post-Psycho. It was like the way Psycho kind of changed horror, and it was, you know, kind of going through the decades and even just looking at different, like, you know, cultural movements, like the kind of reactionary 80s, like how that changed horror. And just, I don't know, I just remember like Night of the Living Dead specifically. I remember watching that class, and that movie and like the context in which it was made, it just like really moved me. I was really affected by that movie and how like intelligent it is, and like it's a classic for a reason. Like we've all seen it, we all love it. But I don't know, I think just realizing that the genre that a lot of people kind of disregard, like still, you know, it's this kind of othered genre, and it's often not given the consideration that other kinds of movies are. And just realizing like, no, it has so much to say about us. And I don't know, I just fell in love.
Was there a horror movie that, when you fell in love, was the object of your affection?
I mean, Night of the Living Dead definitely was one.
Okay.
Yeah, and Texas Chainsaw Massacre is another one. I think that movie's like really beautiful, which is a weird thing to say, but it is.
I wish Toby was still here. He'd love to hear you say that.
Oh my God, learning about him and his movies, like he's another one like Wes Craven, where you realize like the people making these movies are so often like extremely intelligent and really empathetic. He seemed like a really empathetic person, and he seemed like he really cared about people, which is, I think, why he was so able to effectively make something scary, because he had such an innate understanding of like.
Well, you could talk to that, Gil, because actually Gil and Toby were quite close.
Really?
Yeah. You know, he did a Tales from the Crypt that Alan and I wrote.
Oh my gosh.
And we became really, really close friends. In fact, he was going to England to a horror convention. We spoke on the phone, and he said, you should be coming with me. Why aren't you coming with me? And I said, because you didn't ask me. And he said, well, next time you got to come with me. And I said, okay, well, have fun, and I'll talk to you when I get back. And he said, okay. He called me once from England. We chatted. He was having fun. And then he said, I'm flying, I think tomorrow or the next day. I'll call you when I get in. And he didn't call. And I was like, that's odd. Well, he's probably tired, just a long flight. And then the next day, they found him, and he was gone. And I was like, what do you mean he's gone? How could he be gone? It was so bizarre, you know, and you're totally right. He was a pussycat. He was the nicest guy in the world. I mean, he's such a sweet guy.
Yeah.
You know, he and Ernest Dickerson and I, and my wife, Jeannie, we had a club that we would meet like once every 6 months at Musso Frank's, and we would have dinner, and we would close the place because they would say, "Guys, would you mind leaving? It's midnight or whatever,
Yeah.
2 o'clock in the morning." And we would just have this. The four of us would just talk and drink, and it was just fun. It was just fun.
Oh my gosh, that sounds so wonderful.
Yeah. So he really became a very close friend of mine because of Tales. When we first met, it was while he was working on that Tales. And then he had a problem on one of the episodes, which I won't go into, that Alan and I were able to fix pretty quickly. And it actually made it a better episode. And I've spoken to this on our podcast. And from that moment on, we were just like great friends.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. I love when like happy accidents happen like that, making something that's like, oh, this actually really made this better. That's
right.
So excellent taste in Toby.
Oh my gosh. He really, definitely like one of my favorites. I'm so glad to hear like, no, that's exactly the kind of person he was, because it comes across like his films are really personal.
All right. So you exit the University of Michigan with a degree, with a bachelor's in film. Yes,
I forget what the degree's called now. They renamed it, but when I graduated, it was Screen Arts and Cultures, and we all.
Oh, that's very special.
I know, it's very fancy.
What did you want to do with your life?
I mean, I specialized in directing and editing. I loved editing. Like editing was when I came out here, that's kind of where I got, freelance work. And, I worked in post-production for a while, but it was, God, moving out here, I feel like everyone has the experience where it's like, it's such a wake-up call. Like it is hard out here.
What year did you land here?
That would have been 2012. I came here. So it's, I've been
10 years.
10 years.
10 years. Mm-hmm. Well, okay. And all right. So you knew how to cut and to buy, and you cut all your YouTube stuff, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Great work. Really, you spent a bit of time watching your stuff today. Really like.
Thank you. Well, now we're very lucky to employ editors and writers. So we have help editing.
Okay. I was gonna say, because it was really well cut. It was wow.
Oh, really, no, we cannot take all the credit for that. No.
Okay. Thank you for being honest. But whoever is cutting it, it's really well done. It's really is very impressive.
That would be either Josh, Sarah, or Bree. They're wonderful.
Take a bow. Great stuff. Well, but your stuff looks good. You've got a very professional sensibility.
Thank you.
So, hey, the University of Michigan, what was that degree? Whatever
Screen Arts and Cultures.
It's worked. What, all right, so I know that you design costume.
Oh, yeah. I haven't.
Did you do cosplay too?
Yes. Oh my gosh. I had no idea you would have known I did like cosplay and stuff. Yeah, I haven't done it in a while because it's time consuming and also conventions kind of, we weren't doing them for a few years because of COVID. So I think that really like is when I stopped. But
you miss it?
I miss it. Yeah. I would like to start making costumes and stuff again. It's just, it's a lot of, it's time consuming, especially the stuff I like to make, which is a lot of like hand embroidery and just like little, fidgety detail type things. Lots of like Game of Thrones is like, the costumes on that show are beautiful. And I've done a lot of Game of Thrones cosplay, and it's all just this tiny hand embroidery. And it's like this incredible craft, but it takes forever.
You've been podcasting and doing your YouTube Dead Meat since what, 2016?
Yes. So James started the kill count on Dead Meat, and that would have been 2016, 2017. And then I started doing the podcast in 2017. So yeah.
You have 6 million subscribers?
Yeah. We don't know how that happened.
That is when I saw that number today, I had to look at it several times. I think that's an M for million, right? That's M for million?
Yeah.
This is a terrific accomplishment. How have you, well, all right, to a degree, I know how you've done it. You put on a really good show. It's really enjoyable. You're very good at it.
Thank you.
let me jump in, because I remember when the show first started, and you were doing the Friday the 13th kill counts. And there was an article about it on Bloody Disgusting. And I think that's kind of what at least started the flood, because that's what I remember, like a good horror fan. I had that on my RSS feed, and I saw that. I'm like, oh, okay, let me go check this out. And I was instantly hooked. And, especially when you're doing your videos on Fridays, and I was working from home on Fridays. So that was like my Friday ritual was, my wife, my kids, I left the house for the day. I can make a cup of coffee, sit down and watch my kill count for the morning as I got ready for work.
Yeah, it was just truly kind of amazing time. And yeah, Bloody Disgusting helped a lot. They were so kind and writing and doing a write-up about the kill counts when it first started, and the channel was it was small. But what happened was that Friday the 13th video game came out around the exact same time James started doing kill counts of the Friday the 13th movies. He didn't time it on purpose like that. It just was like this beautiful coincidence, and people looking for clips from that new game were finding James's videos, and it just, that I think kickstarted or I think it was like pushing it into people's algorithms and feeds, and it was just like this, so yes, we've worked hard on it, but also we got really, really lucky and found this weird little niche that I think people were looking for something there.
Well, I also think that people recognize the production value in it. Like, it wasn't just a guy in front of his DVD or something. That you actually have like the sets and everything, and you're the effort you guys are putting into it and the writing and everything really, really stood out amongst other things.
Thank you. We're really lucky.
Well, luck is important, but you got a skill set. You got, you're delivering great content because you're capable of it.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Not everybody is, alas, as we know. What do you want to do from here?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, we're producing a movie right now. It's I haven't produced anything before aside from little thing, nothing like this where it's we're trying to get funding, we're trying to get it. It's the whole I've never been in this kind of position on a film, and so that's interesting. We're trying to take dead meat from just YouTube to we kind of talk the talk. We talk about horror movies. I feel like we want to try our hand at making one. There's a script that a friend wrote that I absolutely adore, that I believe in so much. And we actually filmed the proof of concept. We filmed the first 5 minutes of it last month. And so that's on our YouTube channel. So that won't be what the actual movie is, but this was here's kind of the tone, what it would maybe look like. You get a sense of the story. So that's where we're at with it right now.
It sounds terrific.
Yeah, I sent that to Al as your audition reel.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, it's why I thought, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I'm so happy with how that turned out. It was a lot of fun.
So what you are heading down this road, you're trying to get the financing for this little movie?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think right now we're just kind of dipping our toes into a bunch of things that aren't just YouTube. I've really gotten into the voice acting. I've been working on that I'll be coming up on 2 years of that now. I'm not trying to rush it or anything. I'm still, I've been taking lessons. I'm finishing up a reel right now, but I've just been, I don't know, just studying it. I don't want to jump in too fast and coast on.
Hey, you Gil and I have hired a lot of voiceover people over the course of our careers. We thought you were fantastic.
Thank you.
Stop taking classes now. They'll fuck you up.
And if it's any consolation to know this, 100 years ago when I was starting out in New York, two guys from the Midwest came to New York, and I met them through some friends, and they said they wanted to make a movie, and they showed me a trailer that they had made, and the trailer was unbelievably great. And I said, I want to raise the money. It's $1.5 million. I'll do what I can. I don't know if I can raise a nickel. And each time they would come to New York, they would say, Gil, We met with dentists and doctors. We have 500,000. Gil, we have 750. We have other doctors. And each time I would go, I'm showing it to people. I can't raise a nickel. So they finally raised $1.5 million, and I wish them well. And they made a movie called Blood Simple, and it was Joel and Ethan Coen's first movie.
Nice. Oh my gosh.
So when you're talking about you put together something that you put on your channel, I'm reminded of how they went about it. So I think you're right in the strike zone of what you should be doing and how you should be doing it, because that speaks oodles of what you're trying to accomplish, much more so than trying to explain to somebody why they should invest in this, that, or the other. When they can look at something that's a minute or 2 minutes long and get a reaction.
Yeah.
Most people don't know how to read scripts anyway. This has been a lovely time spent with you. Thank you so much. Before we let you go, I wanted to give Jason a chance to you had some of the Reddit comments that we're going to circle back to the thing that brought us all together, the reading on Saturday. The response that I saw on the YouTube comments seemed generous.
Yeah, James said he was reading the chat as it was going because he was watching it in the other room, and he was like, "Oh, everyone really likes this." Like he was texting me during. He's like, "This is great. Everyone's having a good time." So
yeah, I was having a very surreal experience because all of you were focusing on the reading, and I have my two computers, so the reading's happening here, and there's like a 10-20 second delay, so I could watch people reacting to the beats that I knew were coming up, and that were happening, and I could go over here and watch people's reactions in almost real time. It was really amazing. Like when the video game part came up, people lost their minds.
It's so funny. I'm glad I didn't see that. I was distracted enough. Wow, that's so.
Well, you guys were all focusing, and then seeing the actors kind of slipping in and out of different roles. I've never done acting, never thought about acting, I don't understand acting. So like seeing people just turning it on and turning it off.
You had told me before we did this, I think on was the day before, that you had in your entire life, you had never been in a show. You were not one of those guys. So this is the first time in your entire life that you had ever been with a bunch of crazies like us. It was like us saying, "Hey, let's go put on a show."
Yeah.
Suddenly you were being dragged along by a bunch of crazy people putting on a show, and we were looking to you to take care of an awful lot of the technical details, which you did.
I had the best seat in the house.
and on top of it, the technical problem that we had was so unforeseen. That's what it was just devastating about it. There was no possible way to anticipate a question that we could, to this day, I can't answer.
Think of like so many times on like our own channel where, we can't get a stream to start, or like, God, we were doing an interview. Luckily it was with Radio Silence, who they're doing the new Scream movies, and we're very friendly with them. They're great. They were at our wedding. Love them. But we were doing the interview with them and our cameras just died, and we didn't realize until too late that half of our video was just like missing. We still had the sound, but like, so it's just, it happens. And I was so embarrassed. I still think about it and want to die, but like, that's just gonna happen,
but Al, you rebounded beautifully.
Well, thank you. I had a tremendous cast around me. All I had to do was just read them, set up their lines, and man, everyone was wonderful.
But just the fact that Chelsea and Sean Astin had never met, they'd never been on Zoom or anything before, and they were just able to like instantly sell father and son.
Oh my God.
That was really heartening to me. Like I was really like invested in that.
That's probably one of the like most surreal things I've done in a minute. Is I was realizing halfway through like the scene where he's tucking him in for bed, and I'm just like getting tucked in for bed by Sean Astin. I don't know, there was something just so it wasn't hard to be like a cute little kid in that moment. Like, oh my gosh, you're Sam. Like you're Samwise. I felt like a little kid. I was like, this is amazing.
Yeah, last night we sat down and watched Rudy. I showed my oldest son, and that's a movie I grew up on, watching many, many times. So it's just amazing. And again, just seeing, I'm just amazed by it, especially live. It's not like you can like, okay, let me try a different take on this. No, they just had one take to go, and they all just nailed it.
Yeah. What did Reddit have to say about us?
Okay, so from our friend who did a wonderful video promoting the event, Jonathan from Crypt. I think you were on his show.
Yep.
He said, first and foremost, thank you, Al, and the entire cast for reading the script and giving the fans some closure on this film. Second, I love the performances from the cast who seemed so involved and, quote, reanimated during the reading. I can't think of anything negative to say about it. It was amazing, and I am extremely grateful for everyone's time and energy to making this a reality.
That's very nice of my. We owe him a thank you.
Well, I'm going to be speaking to the Motion Picture Home tomorrow. I got a couple of emails from them today asking how it went and what we thought, and from their perspective, they were very, very happy.
Mm-hmm.
Both in what we did in terms of the quality and how we did it, because they were listening, but also in terms of the fundraising effort as well.
And we're not really done yet. We're not done yet.
We're still getting a couple more. I was the one that was monitoring the email and sending out the links and everything. And we got one really big donation from someone associated with from the old show. And I've never yelled "holy shit" like when I got an email. Like, I just saw the name on it pop up, and I saw the amount, and I'm like, "Wait, is this really this person?" And when I put it together, my mind just melted.
Cool.
So they know who they are. If they're listening, thank you.
We need more like that, and it was for a good cause, and you know, people respond. You know, when they see what the Motion Picture Home provides and what it does, and it's so, you know, introverted in terms of our industry, and there's so many people in our industry that get to a point where they really need some assistance. Maybe it's not full-time, you know, care. Maybe it's just financial advice or just someone to talk to. And the Motion Picture Home, you know, I didn't even know much about it until recently, provides so many services.
Yeah, and right after college, my first job for 4 years was working at a nursing home. So it really heartened me as well, because every penny helps for people in those situations.
And I said, you know, they really work out of their heart, but they're so kind. You know, most of the people, if not all the people that I know, they approach what they do for a living with great kindness, and it's just a really great place. It was
a pleasure to be able to put some money into their pockets.
Yeah.
Was there anything else that came from Reddit that we should know about?
Yeah, we got two more.
Okay.
Someone said it was so much fun. It was great to finally get a glimpse of the movie that would have been, and it was really fun getting a behind-the-scenes look at what a table read is like. John Kassir is really good. John Kassir made it feel like an official Tales from the Crypt event. It was nice to see everyone up there having a good time. And I wish I could have seen concept art of what the Harlequin looked like. So there's a couple pieces floating around.
I was going to say, I think there is concept art. I was doing all kinds of Googling before this thing, so I was so curious. And like, art of him is so cool.
Yeah. So I think Todd Masters did a couple sketches. And then the last one said, loved it, especially the scenes with Sean Astin. Every minute with John Kassir's Harlequin has the makings of a great horror villain, cut from the same cloth as Billy Zane's Collector from Demon Knight. And the unexpected video game aspect only accelerated the phantasmic climax.
Cool.
So
well, I think to everyone who responded on Reddit and all the lovely comments we got during the actual table read itself, thank you everyone for the lovely comments, and thank you, Jason, for all your help in this. Thank you for all your help that you do as we do this podcast. And
one last shout out to James, if you don't mind.
Oh, James! Hey, James, do you want to show your face for Tuesday, James? Man.
Oh no, he went to go. He's filming something. I know.
Well, we're going to do this again. We're going to have a conversation with both you and James, because we
would love to.
We are fans. We are absolute and total fans. I'm so glad that Jason brought you into this mix.
Chelsea, we both are. Yeah.
This is so great.
I want to give a shout out to one other person. Is I don't know if he's your head editor or your head writer, Zoran. What's his role now?
Zoran, he's a producer and writer. Yes.
Yeah. So when Chelsea and James got married, they had Zoran take over the show for a little bit, to do the Tremor series. And,
Mhm.
I love looking at the backgrounds they have on their videos to see like Easter eggs and things. And he had something with the Crypt Keeper on it. And I couldn't figure out what it was. And I was like, is that like a clue that you're gonna cover the Tales of the Crypt movies? So like I started messaging him on like every channel I could. I finally got a hold of him. He's like, oh no, it's just a little fun thing I wanted to put in. And me being the self-promoter I am, I'm like, oh, by the way, do you want to come on my podcast? So that's how I kind of got Zorn involved. And when we first started talking about this, I'm thinking like, I had no clue that we would get, all the people that we got. I'm like, who do I know that does voices and stuff? I'm like, oh, Zorn does. And then I know Chelsea does. So that was kind of the initial ideas I had. And then, unfortunately, we couldn't fit Zorn in this time. But he helped me get in touch with Chelsea, and that's kind of how that whole.
Well, for that, he deserves an absolute medal. And thank you, Jason. Thank you, Chelsea. Thank you, everyone, for listening as always. And we will see you next time. The How Not to Make a Movie podcast is executive produced by me, Alan Katz, by Gil Adler, and by Jason Stein. Our artwork was done by the amazing Jody Webster, and Jason Jody, along with Mando, are all the hosts of the fun and informative Dads from the Crypt podcast. Follow them for what my old pal the Crypt Keeper would have called terrific Crypt content.